All right, so Nivek is asking, when Lot's wife was turned into salt for turning back, who turned back to confirm that?
Oh, and by the way, before we let Faye get into answering the question, just want to say shout out to Vanessa. Thank you for joining us today from the Philippines. And if you're just tuning in, please, again, say hi and let us know you're here. We'll love to say hi back. All right, Faye, what's your thought about Lot's wife turning back? How do we know that happened?
So I always thought about that, honestly, because when you watch the movies, of course, the movies aren't going to depict exactly what happened, but when you watch them, it looks like they turn around and they notice that she turned into salt, but that means they would have also seen, the Sodom and Gomorrah burning in the background. So it could have been that she was in front of them and turned around, and then they noticed that she turned into salt, a pillar of salt. We don't know exactly, but the fact of the matter is she's the only one that turned into salt. The fact that nobody else turned into salt, not the two daughters and not Lot himself, could be indicative of the fact that they did not look. Sorry, I do have a toddler with me because I'm trying to be a multitasker. But so from what we know and for what we can see, the fact that Lot and his daughters did not turn into salt means that they did not look. So she could have just been in front of them or in an area where they are on even next to them when she turned into salt. And then the moment that happened, they looked and saw her. But I'm quite sure that they didn't turn around and look behind them because they would have turned into salt as well.
And just because they didn't look back at that moment doesn't mean that they could never have gone back, right, at some later point to figure out what happened, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about that. It could be that maybe they just ran off and didn't have her once they got to their destination. Like, who knows, right? But the fact of the matter is they did not look, because if they did, they wouldn't be, able to tell the rest of the story.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. And they went and lived in a cave nearby, and maybe Tina would know that exactly. So they were still in that general area, Lot and his two daughters. So yeah, I figure I wouldn't be surprised if just every year on the anniversary he would go back and cry there at the pillar. And there's some people who actually believe that pillar still is there to this day. And you can see pictures. Just look up Lot's wife salt pillar, and you could see what people think is the real thing. So they probably could have had a chance.
Is that something
interesting question?
Is that something you would have done, Jay? If something terrible happened to Wendy, would you keep going back to that spot? I would be really sad. I probably would never go near that spot.
I probably would keep going back.
Oh, really?
He's very sentimental. Yeah. He's a very sentimental person.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that.
And to kind of also answer the question, looking at it biblically, if you go to Genesis chapter 19 in the actual story, and you go down to verse, 26, and that's where it says, but his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And it says, and Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. So at some point, Abraham did see Sodom and Gomorrah. He wasn't looking back because he wasn't escaping the city, but rather he was looking toward it from another angle. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that if he could have looked in that direction, he could have seen her as a pillar of salt as well. So, and that command was given to Lot, his wife, and his daughters, and only she, Lot's wife, was the one who was disobedient and suffered the consequences. However, Abraham was able to look in that direction and not be turned to a pillar of salt because he had no desire to, his heart wasn't there at all. His heart was just longing for his family to come out. And I think that's kind of the whole point of this message is us looking for our family to come out of this wicked world so that they can be saved. And I think that's just kind of the deeper meaning, I guess, of that story.
Mm-hmm.